I have been living in Canada for 3 years now, and I need to come clean about something. Before I moved here, I totally thought Canada was just a snowy extension of the US. Like America, but with free healthcare and better maple syrup, right? Wrong. The US and Canada are basically siblings who look identical on the outside, but underneath, their personalities are completely, wildly different. And nowhere is that more obvious than the weird cultural habits and hyper-specific television moments that shape this country. I'm talking about things Americans completely missed because we were too busy watching MTV. So, here are 10 absolute culture shocks and Canadian habits that literally blew my mind. Okay, number 1, the Venmo vacuum. So in the US, if I owe you for tacos, I Venmo you, or I Cash App you. It's a verb. I moved to Toronto, went out for drinks, and told my new Canadian friends, hey, I'll just Venmo you. They literally stared at me like I was speaking Klingon. They used something called Interac e-transfer. Here's the truth about this. Canada's banking system is basically a giant oligopoly. 5 huge banks run absolutely everything. So back in the 90s, they all just held hands and created their own internal network. You just email or text people money directly through your actual bank app. There is no third-party app holding your money hostage for 3 days. I was today years old when I realized Venmo literally does not exist here. And Americans are getting scammed by third-party apps for absolutely no reason. Number 2, we have to talk about the bagged milk. I was wandering the dairy aisle at Loblaws during my first week, and I thought I was hallucinating. 3 floppy plastic bags of milk, stuffed inside a larger plastic bag. In the US, we would literally never do this. We love our massive plastic gallon jugs. But I was Googling this at 2 a.m. And did you know this is entirely because of the metric system? Back in the late 1960s, Canada was ditching the imperial system for metric, redesigning and manufacturing millions of brand new glass and heavy plastic jugs to fit metric liters was going to be insanely expensive for dairy farmers. So they just switched to plastic bags because they could easily adjust the volume on the packaging machines. You snip the corner off and drop it in a special plastic pitcher. It is visually chaotic, but the packaging waste is actually way lower. Number 3, the North American House Hippo. This is a massive Canadian TV moment that Americans completely missed, but it is a core cultural habit here. If you mention a house hippo to literally any Canadian millennial, their eyes will glaze over with pure nostalgia. I had a coworker swear to me that she spent her entire childhood leaving peanut butter toast crumbs in her bedroom closet to feed a miniature hippo. I thought she was insane. Turns out, in 1999, Canadian TV ran this incredibly realistic documentary-style public service announcement, showing a tiny, palm-sized hippo roaming a house at night, eating chips and sleeping in fuzzy slippers. It was made by a group called Concerned Children's Advertisers to teach media literacy like. The whole point was to teach kids not to believe everything they see on television. But it backfired completely. The graphics were too good. An entire generation of Canadians just fully believed the hippo was real. And they still talk about it like it's a cryptid. Number 4, you will get verbally destroyed if you wear your shoes inside a Canadian home. In America, especially down south or in California, we just stomp right onto the living room rug with our Nikes. Not here. I walked into a house party in Vancouver with my boots on and the entire room went silent. Psychologically, Canadians view the outdoors as a wet, slushy, salty nightmare for 6 months of the year. If you track road salt onto someone's expensive hardwood floors, you are dead to them. But historically, it's also because Canada has massive Asian and Eastern European immigrant populations who brought their strict no shoes indoors etiquette over decades ago, and it just permanently fused with the national culture. Take your shoes off at the door or stay outside. Number 5, burnt toast. This is another bizarre TV habit that sounds like absolute gibberish to an American. I was at work, complained that I had a massive migraine. And my boss deadpan looks at me and goes, "Do you smell burnt toast?" I was literally shocked. I thought she was implying I was having a stroke right there in the office. But no, it's a reference to a heritage minute. In the 90s, the Canadian government aggressively pumped these 1-minute historical short films into commercial breaks to force Canadians to learn their own history. One of the most famous ones featured Dr. Wilder Penfield discovering epilepsy treatments by stimulating a woman's brain. And she dramatically yells, "I smell burnt toast." Canadians quote this daily. It is permanently burned into their brains, and they just assume Americans know what they're talking about. Number 6. The legal reflex of apologizing to inanimate objects. I watched a grown man bump into a concrete parking meter in Calgary and say, "Oh, sorry, bud." We all know the stereotype that Canadians are polite, but the psychological and legal reality is wild. I fell down a Reddit rabbit hole and discovered the Canadian Apology Act of 2009. I am not making this up. In the US, if you get into a car crash and say, "I'm sorry," lawyers will use that to prove you admitted legal guilt, and you're getting sued for everything you own. In Canada, they literally had to pass a federal law stating that saying sorry is legally defined as an expression of sympathy, not an admission of fault. They say sorry so instinctively that they had to build legal force fields around the word just to function in society. Number 7. The absolute refusal to say the word restroom. If you walk into a Canadian restaurant and ask for the restroom, they instantly know you're an American tourist. They call it a washroom. I actually researched the linguistics on this because it was driving me crazy. It comes directly from early 20th century British English. America shifted to restroom or bathroom because we love sanitizing concepts. We wanted to make public toilets sound like luxurious lounges where you go to rest. The Brits eventually moved on to loo, or toilet. But Canada, they just locked in washroom 100 years ago and absolutely refused to update their vocabulary. Number 8. The measurement system is a psychological disaster. In America, we use Fahrenheit, miles, and pounds. Simple, consistent, albeit a little outdated. Canada claims they use the metric system, but that is a giant lie. If you ask a Canadian the weather outside, they say it's 20 degrees Celsius. But if you ask them what the temperature of their pool is, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. If you ask how tall they are, 5'10". How much do they weigh? 150 pounds. Distance to the grocery store? 15 minutes. They measure distance in time. Guys, I was staring at my thermostat at 2 a.m., trying to figure out why I was sweating, and realized it's because Canada officially switched to metric in the 70s, but they are physically attached to the US. So construction, cooking ovens, and personal weight stayed imperial just to keep trade and media easy with us, while government and road signs went metric. They are living a dual system nightmare and pretending it's fine. Number 9. The blue fuzzy puppet trauma. This is another iconic television moment Americans completely missed out on. I asked my Canadian neighbor what she was taught about stranger danger as a kid, and she started aggressively singing this incredibly catchy, slightly terrifying song going, "Don't you put it in your mouth." Canadian 90s TV was totally unhinged. They had these fuzzy blue monster puppets singing a blues song about not eating random things you find on the ground. Americans had DARE and McGruff the crime dog, keeping us terrified of drugs and kidnappers. Canadians had singing puppets warning them not to eat mystery berries in the forest. Look it up on YouTube tonight. I promise it will haunt your dreams, but every Canadian will sing it at a karaoke bar if you let them. Number 10. The secret alcohol language. I was invited up to a cottage in Muskoka, which, by the way, is just what they call going to a cabin in the woods, and the host texted me to pick up a 2 to 4 and a Mickey on my way up. I honestly thought a Mickey was a Disney-themed paper towel brand or something. No, a 2 to 4 is literally just a 24-pack of beer, and a Mickey is a 375 milliliter flask-sized bottle of liquor. The history here explains so much about Canadian culture. Because alcohol sales have historically been so heavily controlled by the provincial governments here, you couldn't just buy a bottle of vodka at a gas station like we do in the States. You had to go to very specific, highly regulated government stores like the LCBO or the beer store. Because of this sterile environment, Canadians developed their own underground slang for alcohol sizes, just to make it fun. A Mickey actually comes from old 19th century Irish slang for a small measurement of liquor. Now, it's just standard vocabulary for surviving a long, brutal Canadian winter.